Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. Sweeping changes to U.S. surveillance laws are now in effect after being passed by Congress and signed by the president Tuesday. Among the programs eliminated in the so-called USA Freedom Act, the National Security Agency's disputed phone records collection program. Caitlin Burke has more.
Any senators wish to vote or change their vote? If not, the ayes are 67, the nays are 32. The bill is passed.
In a rare shift of alliances, the USA Freedom Act passed Tuesday with the support of both President Obama and House Speaker John Boehner. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell strongly opposed the bill, saying it makes the U.S. less secure by taking away tools from our warfighters. The law overhauls controversial government surveillance programs, most notably the NSA's bulk collection of Americans' phone records. Under the new legislation, the NSA will slowly lose the power to collect and store those records over the next 6 months. But the government can still get a warrant to gain access to the data connected to specific numbers by going through the phone companies, which typically store the records for 18 months. The USA Freedom Act would continue other post-September 11th surveillance provisions that are considered more effective than the phone data collection program. Those include the FBI's authority to gather business records in terror and espionage investigations and to more easily eavesdrop on suspects who are throwing away cell phones to avoid surveillance.
We're in a new world. We're in the second decade of the 21st century, and we have to have the tools living within that original Constitution. We have to have the tools in order to keep the country safe.
The vote ends, for now, the fight on Capitol Hill between privacy and security-minded lawmakers, though some worry the USA Freedom Act doesn't go far enough. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
The FBI has been secretly spying on Americans from the skies. A new Associated Press investigation shows the FBI has its own little Air Force with scores of planes flying over American cities, recording video and tracking cell phone conversations. The FBI says its activities are related to ongoing investigations, but as Charlene Aaron reports, judges are not involved in approving this surveillance.
In a recent 30-day period, the FBI flew above more than 30 cities in 11 states, recording video and listening in on the cell phone conversations of Americans. An Associated Press investigation unveiled this covert program.
People for years, if going back more than a decade, have been concerned when they see these low-flying airplanes circling above their house, so much so that some people even call 911 and ask the police, who is this person circling above?
This plane was spotted at an airport in Northern Virginia and over the skies in Baltimore, Maryland.
The key thing on that aircraft is that if you look on the left-hand side, there's like a white basketball-looking object, and what that is a camera.
All those surveillance efforts are disguised, hidden behind fictitious companies that act as fronts for the government. U.S. law enforcement officials have confirmed the wide-scale use of the planes, traced to at least 3 fake companies. The FBI says their activities are related to ongoing investigations, but judges are not involved in approving these surveillance flights.
When the government is collecting information on people, searching what's going on in people's private lives, they need to have a warrant. That's the heart of our traditional protection for individual liberty, is that a judge has to look at what they've got and say, yes, there's enough here to search.
In a statement, the agency says the aircraft are not equipped, designed, or used for bulk collection activities or mass surveillance. The FBI uses all tools and equipment and conducts all investigations in accordance with the Attorney General guidelines.
The biggest concern here, I think, is that these flights are not only going overhead and looking down, but they're using quite a bit of high-tech equipment while they're flying over to find out what's going on. They have technology that simulates being a cell tower, so they can find out whose cell phones are underneath and track the movement of people. And that one is very problematic from a constitutional perspective.
Until now, the public was not aware of the spy program.
This is all coming at a time when the government, and particularly President Obama, has said he encourages a debate on surveillance and privacy.
Meanwhile, aerial surveillance represents a changing landscape for law enforcement, something the federal government maintains is an important tool in criminal, terrorism, and intelligence cases. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Google is taking steps to address concerns about the way it collects the personal information of its users. The internet company is reportedly simplifying its privacy controls for its more than 1 billion users. Google redesigned the My Account Hub, where all of Google's key privacy controls can now be found. They were previously spread across far-flung sections of the Google website, with few explanations of the pros and cons of adjusting each setting. Account holders can also undergo a checkup that will break down which of the company's various services are gathering information about them.
At a hearing on Tuesday, family members of Americans detained in Iran begged Congress to put up a fight to free those prisoners. Among the detained, a former Marine, a Washington Post reporter, and a man who worked with the FBI. As Paul Strand reports, so is an American pastor imprisoned for 3 years.
The wife of imprisoned American pastor Saeed Abedini says lawmakers can demand Iran free several Americans if it wants a nuclear deal with the U.S.
These are the people that will have to look at the deal. These are the people that define foreign policy. And so these are the people that Iran has to answer to some degree.
Some people say something as crucial as a nuclear deal with Iran shouldn't be held hostage to the fact that Iran is holding just a few Americans prisoner. But the family members of those prisoners were here to point out today what could be more crucial than their lives and their freedom. Naghmeh Abedini first prayed with a group of supporters, some dressed in orange jumpsuits to show solidarity with prisoners held unjustly in Iran, then spoke of her testimony.
I hope that they can see the personal side of the story, of the pain that our family goes through daily, but at the same time to know that the strength and peace that comes from, that we have in this really horrible time comes from our faith in Jesus Christ.
And the lawmakers hearing from relatives of 4 detainees were listening.
Ms. Abedini, I just wanted to make a comment to you how moving your testimony of Jesus Christ was to me personally. In some of my darkest hours in my life, when I thought that there was nobody for me, he was.
And the Congress members were ready to play hardball.
That the onus is on Iran to release these Americans if they expect any negotiated agreement or any other engagement.
These family members testified it's been years of horror for all the American detainees, like Sarah Hekmati's brother, Amir. He's a former U.S. Marine. Iran's imprisoned 4 years for espionage and what Iran called waging war against God.
He's referred to his situation in some instances as he's died 100 times.
And the years of waiting have taken a terrible toll on the families.
I've been with Naghmeh actually since about 30 hours after her husband was first taken.
Tiffany Behrens is International Legal Director for the American Center for Law and Justice. In that position, she fights for Pastor Abedini's freedom and has befriended his wife.
She's got 2 young children who, when I first met them, came to her waist and are now almost to her shoulders, who have missed really almost 50% of their lives without their father. So very difficult circumstance for the whole family.
Lawmakers insist Iran's torture of these detainees and their families must end.
I think we should state unequivocally, both from the House and the Senate, that any deal with Iran is dead on arrival that doesn't include the release of these prisoners.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
2 Christian pastors possibly facing execution in Sudan say they are not afraid. The charges are related to their Christian faith involving national security and offending Islamic beliefs. The pastors are from South Sudan. CBN News reporter George Thomas talked to them by phone from their Khartoum jail cell. David Yeen said he is not afraid because God chose him to suffer. Reverend Yat Michael said he has suffered psychological intimidation and hasn't talked to his family for more than 2 months. He was accused of spying when he was arrested last January.
When they interview me, they ask me why I'm preaching here. I say I'm preaching because this is my call. I'm a pastor. I must preach the word of God. They say no. You don't mean to preach the word of God. You have hidden agenda. I say no. I don't have any hidden agenda. They accuse me because I'm a spy here. They say like that.
Pastor Yeen wants Christians to pray their imprisonment will be for God's glory and that both pastors will be at peace with those who oppose them. You can hear more from the imprisoned pastors by checking out the Global Lane blog at cbnnews.com.
The parents of a high school student in Indiana are suing the school district over prayer said at school events. The American Civil Liberties Union filed a suit on behalf of parents Jim and Nicole Beller. They say the prayers make their son feel ostracized. Her son is a sophomore at River Forest Community School Corporation in Hobart. The ACLU told the Munster Times the prayers represent a serious and flagrant affront to the First Amendment. They also want to stop prayers before school board meetings and at graduation.
Texas is finally getting some sunny skies this week as residents work to restore homes and lives after last week's devastating flooding. In neighboring Oklahoma, the state's emergency management director says damage from all the severe weather there could reach $200 million. And in Houston, officials estimate damages around $45 million. Congressman Louis Gohmert told CBN News it's been terrible for his region.
There's a lot of water in Texas, and in East Texas, where I live and represent, we have lots of rivers and creeks, so we're used to water, but they're overflowing, lakes that never overflow or overflowing. But we've had a tremendous amount of damage, very damaged areas.
Operation Blessing has been helping flooding victims in areas of Texas. The mayor of San Marcos in Central Texas says Operation Blessing has brought hope to their city.
We've never experienced anything like this. I don't think any community in this part of Texas has ever experienced anything like this. So it's hard to gauge. But the other thing that we've never experienced is just the outpouring of love and support and that contribution of hope from so many different groups that has just lifted this community up.
You can find out more about what Operation Blessing is doing and see how you can help at ob.org.
More than 400 passengers are still missing after a Chinese cruise ship capsized Monday night on the Yangtze River. 456 passengers, mainly retirees, were on board. Officials say the ship capsized in a severe storm with winds up to 80 miles an hour. The captain is telling Chinese media that the vessel was caught in a cyclone. Relatives of the passengers marched to Shanghai's main square Wednesday to urge the government to disclose more information about the missing.
The National Center on Sexual Exploitation is determined to help fight the negative impact pornography has on communities and families. Each year, the organization compiles a list of 12 companies, groups, or events that contribute to sexual exploitation. They call it the Dirty Dozen list. Some of the business on it include YouTube, Verizon, and even the U.S. Department of Justice. CBN News spoke to the Director of Communications at the NCSC about why they published this list.
Scientific research, anecdotal evidence, and common sense all show that pornography, as you said, is a harmful and mind-altering drug that really is a public health crisis in America and contributes to all other forms of sexual exploitation. But despite this mounting evidence of harms, there are many companies and organizations that continue to add to this pandemic, seeking to profit or push their agenda by pushing pornography onto the American consumer. And so really, the Dirty Dozen list is just an effort to have public pressure put onto these organizations to show them that that's not what the American public wants.
And to learn more about the Dirty Dozen list, simply log on to cbnnews.com for our entire interview.
Coming up, fans pay tribute to their favorite Christian musicians, athletes, and artists. We're hitting the red carpet of the K-Love Fan Awards to bring you the story from Music City. Today, we're getting a look at some incredible surveillance video out of Brooklyn where a toddler was struck by an out-of-control car. It's hard to watch, but we want to let you know that the child involved only walked away with a few bumps and bruises. As you can see here, the car loses control, strikes a small tree, and then runs completely over the child. He survived by landing in between the car tires. Eyewitnesses were able to get the car off the little boy, who they say was conscious and alert. He was taken to the hospital and only suffered minor injuries.
Some big names in Christian music came out last weekend for the 2015 K-Love Fan Awards. CBN's Angela Zatopek has some of the highlights from this year's event.
I'm Angela Zatopek with CBN News. The third annual K-Love Fan Awards just took place at the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee. Presented by Pepsi, the show was hosted by Fox & Friends' Elizabeth Hasselbeck and actor Kirk Cameron. Musicians, athletes, and artists were honored that have a positive impact on our pop culture. Here's a look at some of the winners. Male Artist of the Year, Chris Tomlin. Female Artist of the Year, Francesca Battistelli. Song of the Year, Newsboys, We Believe. Worship Song of the Year, Lauren Daigle, How Can It Be? What I've become. Sports Impact went to the tight end for the New Orleans Saints, Benjamin Watson. And AD The Bible Continues received Movie Impact of the Year.
When inside each of you is the greatest gift.
For a full list of winners, visit cbnnews.com.
Up next, America has a chance to become the world's #1 energy producer and wean itself off foreign oil. So why are people standing in the way? For years, the United States has been trying to reach energy independence, but now the Obama administration is making it harder to get there.
New rules that tighten up on fracking for oil on federal lands are going into effect this month. And as Paul Strand reports, it is just more fuel for the fire for both sides in this debate over fracking.
Fracking has become a common way to get previously unreachable energy out of the earth. It blasts a mix of water, sand, and chemicals into rock formations, breaking them up and freeing trapped oil and natural gas. But some worry it might be creating health risks for people who live near the wells.
When he would go outside and play in the backyard, he would cough all night long.
We have people reporting health symptoms that live near these sites: nosebleeds, nausea, headaches.
Others who live on the land where the process takes place say that's nonsense.
I haven't seen any real proof that it's harmed any health.
They also fear moves to ban or restrict hydraulic fracturing will take away their constitutional right to benefit from rich minerals beneath their land.
You're taking my property, and you can't do that.
Now, tighter regulations on the 28% of the country that's federal land will make it more expensive and time-consuming to frack. That's infuriating many oil and gas people.
What we've got now is an example of the government overreaching.
Breitling Energy is based in this Dallas skyscraper. Inside, CEO Chris Faulkner says states already put tight rules on the high-tech procedure, and now the feds piling on more will hurt this valuable industry.
It supports 10.1 million direct and indirect jobs. And quite frankly, I think you'd be hard-pressed since 2008 to find a brighter spot in the U.S. economy.
Faulkner says his industry already faces daunting obstacles on the more than 750 million acres where the feds control the mineral rights.
The state will give us a permit on an average of about 35 days. The average permitting time for a federal land oil and gas permit is 227 days. And potentially this may add another 50 to 100 additional days. You're talking about 1 year to get a permit to drill one well on federal land.
Backers of the new rules say they'll only cost a few $1,000s per well, but some opponents say it could be more like $250,000. The new rules force companies to reveal what secret chemicals they use to frack. One company complains if its competitors can find that out for free, it could cost it nearly $400 million. Faulkner complains this type of harmful overregulating doesn't make sense against a business that could help make America energy independent and bring in vast wealth.
It's been instrumental in really attributing to billions, if not trillions, of tax dollars.
Some communities, though, just don't want anything to do with it. In most cases, it's due to unproven fears over health and safety. Denton, Texas is a prime example.
There's a young professor here at the University of North Texas in Denton who helped lead a successful campaign to bring fracking to a halt in the local community.
We were in a situation where it was kind of impossible to make it compatible with health and safety, and so we ended up calling for a ban on hydraulic fracturing in the city of Denton, and that passed last November.
He admits that fracking may indeed help America become the world's #1 energy producer, but he questions the very supposition that that's a good goal.
We ought to reconsider our commitment to more and more energy consumption. You know, I think it's premised on this ideal that somehow more energy equals better life. But if you look at actually indices of happiness, Americans are no happier now than they were 60 years ago when we had half the per capita energy consumption.
I think that's a ludicrous statement.
Faulkner says in the real world, people want energy and more of it.
There's not one model that says that the growth from oil consumption worldwide is not going to increase between now and 2035.
Briggle insists much more research is needed into the side effects of hydraulic fracturing.
I think the overall picture here is we've committed to a technology before we had understood a lot about its unintended consequences.
For instance, it blasts water and chemicals into deep rock to break it up.
We don't have enough monitoring to know what's going on with this water. We do have some evidence to suggest some of the chemicals in fracking are showing up in aquifers.
The EPA on 3 different occasions under this one president has gone out and spent years looking for examples of water contamination or impacts to the environment, and they have found none. I think it's really, a testament to President Obama's determination to stymie our industry.
Briggle says Denton's ban may show Faulkner and others in the oil and gas lobby that voters aren't willing to be bought when it comes to their own community.
They spent over $1 million here. We were able to raise about $75,000, so they outspent us 15 to 1. But we beat them, 60 to 40. A lot of people who might have been sympathetic to the oil and gas industry just felt like they were being bullied.
But Faulkner insists hydraulic fracturing's too important and beneficial to stop.
It's about America's going to utilize this resource. They want to buy it from Venezuela, from Iran, from Iraq, from Saudi, or they want to get it from our feet, which helps our country, pays down trade deficits, employs our people, and allows us to fund it at a much cheaper cost.
These new federal regulations are certainly bringing more focus on the practice of fracking, but also bringing up again those questions. Is this a good or a bad thing for America? Or maybe a little bit of both. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Denton, Texas.
Operation Blessing is still on the ground in Nepal, offering medical aid to earthquake victims.
The lack of hospitals high in the mountains of Nepal makes medical care a rarity for most villagers. Since most roads have been destroyed, Operation Blessing is flying in to tend to the medical needs of isolated villages. The teams are also distributing chlorine generators so villagers have access to safe, clean drinking water. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at obi.org.
Finally this hour, an uplifting message for your Wednesday. We call it Wednesday's Word, and today that word that comes to mind for me is blessing. It is certainly my prayer that I'm a blessing to those around me. That said, if you can't be a blessing, be sure you aren't a burden. No one wants or needs another heavy load. And that holds true for those around you because you certainly don't need the added weight either. So it may be time to shake off the presence of those who are burdens instead of a blessing.
And that is it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Make this a wonderful Wednesday.